Hello, this is William Tincup and Ryan Leary, and you're listening and watching the Use Case podcast. We got John Lee on today. So, John, would you do us a favor and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your software?
Thanks for having me, guys. I am the co-founder and CEO of Vimcal. Vimcal is the world's fastest calendar designed for extremely busy people and their teams. So I like to say that Vimcal is kind of like your calendar on steroids. We have a lot of heavy scheduling features, time zone conversion features, basically built for people whose calendars look like a giant block from morning to night. And yeah, about a year ago, we launched a second product called Vimcal EA, which is a calendar for EAs, as the name suggests.
Right.
And we're really going after, again, the most complex scheduling cases, people with the most meetings. And for us, the EA was the natural customer to go after because, they have the most complex scheduling cases. So yeah, we've been live for 4 years, going strong, and I'm excited for what's ahead.
What got you to solve this problem? Where do we start?
Absolutely. We did not start as Vimcal or as a calendar company. We actually started first as an augmented reality company, pivoted to a fitness company, and then in year 3, we became Vimcal. And Vimcal really started when we were working on our second startup, which is in the fitness space. And
Right.
I was fundraising for that company. And I remember this was at the end of YC, so demo day, right? Like it's investor mania. You're scheduling. I think I had calls 9 to 5 for 3 months straight. Without a break. And when you're scheduling so many meetings, and at the peak, it was 30 investor meetings to be scheduled at once in my inbox. I just remember messing up the scheduling like crazy. You really have two choices as a founder when you're scheduling investor meetings. You either send times out manually, do the time zone conversions in your head using Google, whatever, or you use a booking link like a Calendly or Mixmax.
Right.
Now, when you're asking someone for hundreds of thousands of dollars, you want to avoid any chance of potentially insulting them or, making them unhappy. And sometimes there's this weird power dynamic with sending a booking link. You're basically telling the person to, you do the
Come
scheduling,
to
you look at
my
my
calendar.
Yeah.
I used to struggle with that, and for the longest time, I remember sitting there crafting that final sentence.
Uh-huh.
Here's my you can send me sometimes, or if it's easier, here's my
Exactly.
and I still struggle with that
Oh,
just a little bit, just a
I
little
did the
bit.
same. I had the same struggle, but I would phrase it, hey, send me your calendar widget, or here's mine.
You
Like,
do
so
not
it
struggle.
made,
No. You
I
do
made the
not
power
struggle with that.
dynamic.
No. Your emails say schedule time on my calendar.
Yeah, well, I got over it quickly. This is,
Let's just
I did,
set
it
the
lasts,
expectations here.
sure, it lasts for a couple hours, but anyhow, I do remember putting in there, send me your calendar widget, because there's a power dynamic. What John's talking about,
Yeah.
it's like, I remember thinking how they're going to receive this. And like, okay, and then you're right. I quickly got over it. But John, you're scratching an itch because we've all had this problem. So
Yeah.
good.
You really have to massage the message if you're going to send a link.
That's right.
Honestly, I like receiving the link because it gives me full control to book a time where I want it, of the times remaining. But yeah, you never know who's going to take it what way. So we built an entire company around just that one interaction.
Right.
And
It's amazing. Yeah.
But going back to when I was fundraising, I did not use a link. So I sent out times manually. And I just kept messing up left and right. Double bookings, 4 a.m. calls with people in Asia. Just, I didn't know what I was doing.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember at one point, I'm pretty sure I had a good conversation going. I thought maybe the chances were pretty high of getting one investment. And then I double booked, had to reschedule, and never heard back. I mean, investors are busy people, but I messed up on the scheduling. So
No, and their rationale is pretty simple. I mean, outside of the arrogance part, theirs is if you can't manage a calendar, How can we trust you to manage a business?
Right.
That's a good point.
Yep.
That is a
Right.
very
Now,
good point.
John, during this
That's
time,
fair.
was the conversations for Vimcal in its current state, or were we still in the other startups?
The other startup, the Finnish startup.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was like 10 months before Vimcal ever existed. And we didn't think at the moment that, oh, we're going to make something out of this. It was just,
Right.
oh, that sucked. This is annoying. But it was just like in the back of our minds and
Hmm.
didn't think twice about it.
Well, that's some
And
of the best ideas. That's where they come from, is pain.
yeah,
So you
exactly.
had that pain because of some other things. You had that pain. You're like, this is a real problem. If it's a real problem for me, it's got to be a real problem for other people.
Yep. Exactly. Spot on. So the first version of Vimcal was a calendar built specifically for founders who are fundraising. And just our goal early on was pretty simple. We just wanted everyone at YC Demo Day to be using Vimcal on both sides,
Right.
the investor
Right.
side and the founder side. And they're just like pinging Vimcal links back and forth with each other. And the way we solved that Calendly handoff was in Vimcal, you can drag times on your calendar. And as you drag those blocks you want to give someone, we'll actually type out are you free, Monday? Are you free Tuesday, 5 to 6,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And then we will throw in a booking link, either hyperlink it or say, or if it's easier, book here. Kind of the massaging that you guys are talking about. And that way you get the best of both worlds. You get that
Right.
personal touch where you actually get the times written out, but you get all of the benefits of a booking link where you don't have to actually write them out and you don't have to convert any time zones. We will convert the time zone for you.
Right.
So you can just drag, copy, paste, everything's taken care of.
So connecting to kind of the historic platforms of Gmail and Outlook, how hard is that for Ryan and I? This is actually kind of new. Easy, hard? What's the bit with those two players?
Yeah, it is a lot harder than you think. I would just say that the
Wait, you mean you just
APIs
don't?
are not
All I do is click a
documented well.
link. It might be hard for you. I click a link, and it just works.
Yeah.
I always heard Outlook, like sometimes they still have some holdovers that still do the desktop version of Outlook,
Mm-hmm.
not the cloud version. So that was hard to sync with.
Yeah.
Not as much the cloud version. I mean, yes, there's still that. But tell us all about it. Take us into that world.
Absolutely. So we started out, I think for the first 2 or 3 years, only supporting Google accounts.
Mm-hmm.
When we started, we didn't know anything about calendars. We
Right.
barely worked with any public APIs before. So it was just a year and a half of stabbing in the dark a lot of times because you would find just bugs left and right. And you would not find the solution in the documentation. They would oftentimes be in some random forum, like halfway through the page, from like a response from 6 years ago. And you're like,
Yeah.
Right.
wow.
Right.
Yeah,
But it worked. Yeah.
but it works.
Yeah. This is like you're trolling Reddit or
Exactly.
GitHub trying to find something like, does that work?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
from 2011.
Yeah.
Let's give it a shot.
Let's try it. And bug goes
It
away.
works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Did you? I want you to continue down this path. But at that, when you're searching, and your results or your answers are coming up in threads that are 6, 7 years old,
Mhm.
does something in your mind tell you, maybe we're old? Maybe we're building something that's old. Although obviously you're not, because this is a great product. But
Mm.
I'm just curious because a lot of things that I search come up like that. I'm
Yeah.
like, maybe I'm that far behind that I don't need to worry about this.
I think it's
How
the
do
way
you battle that?
I think it's the way they index things. That some of those things that are more popular, they get they're much probably newer. In
Mhm.
Here's how I justify it, right? When I see stuff like that pops, and I'm looking for something specific, and it hits Reddit, and it's 12 years ago,
Clearly, it was relevant.
I think, well, there's something newer on that topic. It just didn't get as many responses. So the one that got the most responses, it indexed higher. That's how, I mean, again, I could be completely wrong
Mm.
about all that, but that's how I've rationalized it, I guess is my point.
We're giving John a complex. He came on to tell us
No,
about
no,
the
no,
Yeah,
no.
software.
I'm getting triggered right now, guys.
We're like, dude, you're outdated. You're gone. Goodbye.
No, no, no,
No,
no, no, no, no,
which
no, no.
no. Go ahead. Continue down your story. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back. I think if anything, it's it's a mix of it being a vote of confidence because there is a solution, Because at that point, you've tried everything. You're basically reverse engineering parts of the API.
Right.
And so I think it makes building a scheduling or calendaring tool more defensible. I always tell
Right.
like investors when I talk to them, like, just building a good calendar is a competitive moat. It's so hard.
Right.
That's why you see a lot of calendars being acquired, because no one wants to build it out. It takes
Mm-hmm.
forever. And you
Oh,
can't just hire a
100%.
team of like 50 smart people to do it.
No.
Like
No.
it's a very visual product, so it is a big part art, and then a smaller part science.
Right.
And I think another thought
So
at
you
the time,
started with Google,
yeah,
and
Mhm.
then somebody at one point said, "Hey, love Google, but we're an Outlook or a Microsoft shop or
Right,
something like that."
right. And we always wanted to support Outlook, but
Sure.
being in the startup ecosystem, being founders ourselves, everyone was on Google.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Microsoft hooking up with their API was another year in beta, basically. Just testing things out. But we keep getting surprised by how large that market is.
Yeah.
Huge.
Mhm.
Everybody on the enterprise. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
thing
Yeah.
is it's not like guys like us. We're using Gmail and Google, all the Google products and etc. They're using Teams
exactly.
and Outlook.
And we all
So
joke about it, but
yeah,
I mean, you got to be honest with yourself at some point and say they do own the market
They
at
they
that
do
level. At that
They do.
level. Yeah.
at
And
the
that's why you'll see
enterprise.
responses that are like 6 years old, because that is
Right.
how deep their moat is.
Yeah.
You'll find those answers probably 10 years from now. They're still going to be very
Mm-hmm.
Right.
relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
hmm
Has anyone asked you to solve the problem of one to many, meaning I'm trying to schedule a meeting with amongst 8 different board members. Now,
Yeah.
how do you go about that? There used to be a tool, I can't remember the name of it now, and it doesn't really matter. But everyone would go in and fill out their openings, and then it would then
Do
probably
its
through
thing.
machine learning, it would then connect and say, okay, this is the time that all y'all say,
hmm
and here's the meeting, here's the conference link, blah blah blah. Has anyone asked you to solve that problem yet, or is it something that comes up?
Great question. We have that exact feature. So,
What?
yep.
If I look distracted, it's because I'm signing up right now.
That is fantastic. That's a game changer for me. I mean,
Yeah.
the one-to-one stuff is great, clearly, and I like the way that y'all go about it. But the one-to-many, man,
Hmm.
it's bone crushing, soul crushing for a lot of people that are trying to get everyone on the same page. So I love it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So our feature is called Group Vote.
Yep.
It's exactly what it sounds like. You poll a large group of people. It is often used for board meetings, like you mentioned,
Right. Right.
birthday parties, offsites, all kinds of events where you don't know the specific time, but you know about 3, 4, 5, and you want people to vote on it. And I think the tool you're talking about in the
Hmm.
past was called Doodle. I
That was one of
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
believe they're
yeah.
still around, but I think they like run ads on their links now, so fewer
Right.
people are using them. And it's pretty funny because we launched Group Vote before our EA product. They're just separate things, and
Mm-hmm.
it had good usage, not great usage, because it was very, I guess, spotty how people
Right.
would use it. But it is actually one of the most heavily used features by EAs, because they're
Sure. Yeah.
always trying to get groups of 10, 20 people together, quarterly board meetings,
Right.
whatnot.
Well, John, in our world,
Panel
in the
interviews.
eight, yeah, that's exactly right. Panel interviews, hiring manager,
Mhm.
trying to get the recruiter, trying to get all these different people now doing with these people all in multiple different time zones, around the world, etc. It's almost impossible.
Yeah,
And so, there's a great case in both HR and in recruiting for what you have.
absolutely. And I think you touched on an interesting point, which is you talked about the one to many case. And that's
Yeah.
something we think about a lot, which is the combinations and permutations of people scheduling with each other. So you have your typical one-to-one, and then as you know, the number of people on a meeting increases linearly. So you go 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 2 to 3, 2 to 4, 2 to 5. As
Right. Right.
n increases linearly, the complexity of scheduling the right meeting increases exponentially. So
Sorry.
the more the number of people increases, the more it makes sense for software to do the time picking rather than a human.
100%.
So we actually build features for all these cases, the
And
one-to-one, the one-to-many.
is that a bot? Yeah, I would assume it's a bot or some type of technology that's going through and finding the one place where everyone agrees that should be the time for the meeting.
You could do it that way, but it's actually more simple than that just because people are voting. So you just see the most popular times.
Got it.
And then you can add params around it. So just, the most popular time might not be the best time because of XYZ.
Right.
You might need these 2 people out of the 10 to be for sure voting on this time, right? Again, all these combinations.
And it doesn't matter in that 8 or 10 people that you're going after if they're using Gmail or Outlook.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It pings them where they are. Is there any other? It's going to be a dumb question. Is there any other calendars that matter? I mean, outside of Gmail and Outlook. Can anybody think of one?
I'm biased.
I mean,
I'm biased. I would say no. I would say if you have a lot of meetings, it's a no-brainer to use Vimcal. But
So
again,
you can't use like AOL or Yahoo Calendar or any of
Hotmail
those.
has a kick-ass calendar, by the way. Oh yeah.
But those are the two. Those are the two ones, right?
yes,
the
those are the
ones we-
2 core ones that everything else is built on. There are
Right.
some other self-hosted options, but I would say those are more for people who just care a lot about security and privacy.
Right.
So you would see a lot of engineers using those because they don't want to share their data. But
Fair.
mass market is Google and Microsoft are the foundations.
Right. So, John, a question. This is more forward thinking than current conversation. Where does calendar scheduling tools and solutions like Vimcal go from here? Right. So we've
Yeah.
got the scheduling, we've got the group
It's legit.
scheduling, and all of that. Where's the innovation moving forward? Where do you end up?
Absolutely. And I think to answer that, it's important to break up kind of what are the different buckets right now on the market. And what you'll see is you have I would call the general mass market calendars. So that's going to be your Google Calendar, your Outlook Calendar, and a lot of the free or lower priced calendars you'll see in the App Store.
Right.
They are better for like college students, for personal use, maybe for family use. And then there's a split between that and what's really good for work. And so then you start seeing the Calendlies, the Zooms, the Vimcals, where it's really built for people who schedule a lot of meetings. And their use cases are different.
Right.
And so I think when you talk about where the innovation is going to go, you have to see which bucket you're talking about. We see a lot of, I would say more, you can talk about AI or like scheduling on your behalf. I would say that actually is probably going to happen more in the personal scheduling on the lower end, because you're dealing with fewer high-stake meetings. When you deal with more high-stake meetings, like the work environment, you actually don't want AI or, too advanced or get too smart for people, because people have a very low tolerance for mistakes in the calendar. If you think about your calendar, it is pristine. Every event is completely accurate. You don't have any typos on it, right? And you want to put things there on the first time, correctly on the first time, because you're inviting people that you might not know well. Now, if you think about your email, your notes, like there's typos everywhere. There's a bunch of drafts and junks that you don't need, right? My inbox is a
I do
complete
that on
nightmare.
my work calendars too.
Right, exactly.
I'm just gonna be honest. I'll take the hit for the team. Yeah. Is there a crossover between 'cause obviously there's a use case here for recruiting, William, like you said, right? Hiring, interviewing, all of that. Is there a crossover here for me to manage 3 kids, sports, travel, all of that stuff personally, whatever I'm doing, and fitting that into a work calendar that maybe William doesn't see it, but I see it and it fits into my day.
Absolutely. So the thing that is, so I look at email and calendar as sister apps. You need both, right, for everything in life. And when it comes to email, you want each context to be separate. You want your personal email in your personal inbox. You want your work email in your work inbox, right? You don't want them to get muffled together. With calendar, it's different. Everyone has one set of 24 hours. They want to see all their priorities in one view. And that was actually one of the biggest learnings we took away when we launched Outlook, was just how many people have a work calendar in Outlook, but a personal calendar in Google, right? Your Gmail. And just to be able to see them side by side is one of the stickiest points of our app for Outlook users, which is funny. It's like basically we're just showing your meetings, right? But you can't really do that in Outlook or Google Calendar very well. There's usually a huge lag if you're trying to sync between the two. So there's a lot of different ways where you can make things easier between work and personal. One is just showing both in one place. The other is blocking your work calendar with your personal events and just keeping it anonymous. And these are all things that you can do in Vimcal and some other apps. And then, or for example, when you send out a booking link, to be able to protect both your work calendar and your personal calendar, even though people are booking on your work calendar, right? So there is a lot of intersection between the two. And I would say people probably 80% of the time stick with their work calendar, at least in our context, Vimcal users. But the personal calendar is kind of this like hidden thing they don't want their coworkers to see, but is absolutely important in determining what work meetings get scheduled.
Right. Have y'all thought about kind of the positioning near term or even longer term as kind of a Teams product? Because we talk about HR and we're thinking about the use case inside of recruiting, but truthfully, you can see any team, any corporate team that's just trying to figure out how to get everyone synced up together, struggling with this. If you go all the way back, they're like putting times in, Tuesday at 2, Tuesday at 3, Tuesday at 4, and emails go around, with 15 different people. This just seems to me to be an easy segue into efficiency for teams.
You are spot on again. Our focus this year is on building out more team features. For the first 3 years, Vimcal was pretty much a single player experience. And last year, we started pushing out a lot of multiplayer features. And that has been a game changer for us and for our users. We've traditionally gone after, because we've gone after the really busy people, it tended to be the founders, the C-suite, the GPs. And then as we launched these team features, we just saw usage spread throughout the organization. When your CEO is the first person using a calendar app and he or she is sharing times with the rest of the team, other people are going to start joining, right? And
100%.
Again, you're not paying out of pocket because it's on their team plan. And
That's
so, again, all those combinations I was talking about with 1-to-1, 1-to-3, 3-to-2, those are all team features that we have built out and are building out. And that, alongside the EA product, are two big priorities this year.
I love that.
So in the use case of recruiting, talent acquisition, interviewing, things like that, is Vimcal something you see as a standalone product and organization just brings Vimcal in, they use it within their recruiting function, or is this something where they can get this through maybe their tracking system or applicant tracking system where they're managing all of their candidates?
Good question. What we've seen so far is that, especially when it comes to recruiting, it's been pretty self-serve. So recruiting is an interesting use case because I would say recruiting and sales are very specific use cases where they're the type of users that would really like Vimcal and other scheduling apps. But they also have a central hub that everything needs to tie into. So at the moment, we don't do any specific integrations, but that's definitely something we're thinking about, right? So for example, Salesforce for sales, all the ATS is for recruiting.
Right. So once you start building those hooks, then it could be into their workflow. If they don't need it in their workflow right now, they could just use the product.
Exactly. And you can still use it on top of the workflows because those hubs usually sync with your calendar. And
they do.
we have a two-way sync with your calendar. So anything that gets booked via, your ATS or your HubSpot will also show up in Vimcal and vice versa.
Is there really? It's an interesting point, John. So that we know other solutions tie in, right, and do this. And William, maybe you'll definitely have a thought here. Is it important for the calendar solution to tie into an ATS? Does that matter?
Yeah. Well, in the case of an ATS, yes, because it's compliance. You want every one of
Compliant.
those
Okay.
touches to be. You need to know those things in case you ever audit it, so that
Yeah.
you can say, yes, here was the 10. Here was the 10 candidates. Here's their candidate slots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you really want everything once post application, right? So once they've applied, you want everything in
Yeah.
your system of record, i.e., the ATS. I would argue the same thing is true of sales. That once you engage a prospect, you're going to want everything
Every
in
touch
sales.
point.
Every touch point in Salesforce or in HubSpot or whatever, you're going to want to be able to see it just so you can track back and say, okay, here was the place where where we went sideways or we were successful.
Yeah. Now, the good thing with the meetings that you book, either whether you're recruiting or for sales, is that it is stored on your Microsoft or Google account. So that is the ultimate source of truth for both, the recruiters, sales, and the Vimcal users.
Yeah, you're the conduit into which these things happen.
Yeah.
And so as you go about kind of getting more and more people to use it, how do you what's your go to market? Like, how do you? Because I've seen a couple of these through the years of come to market, and it seems more viral. There's a virality to what they do, and I'm sure that was all kind of created. However, what's your take, and how do you want to get more and more people to use the Vimcal?
Yeah, it's interesting because we have pretty much split our go-to-market in two now. So we have our flagship Vimcal product that's bottoms up, PLG. We have 3 availability features, which are basically 3 types of booking links. So the Dragon copy that I told you about, we have personal links, which you can think of as our version of Calendly, and then we have the group vote, which is our version of Doodle. And our users are sending those out all the time when they need to book meetings. So they're basically advertising Vimcal on our behalf.
That's right. Right.
Like the Calendly playbook. But on the other end, with our Vimcal EA product, we are now building out a sales team. We're going up market, whereas the other product is more in the early stage ecosystem, branching out, but still, more dominant there. And EAs tend to be at larger companies. So we are going to, now Fortune 500 companies, getting through IT, doing pilots and doing the whole sales cycle. And it's interesting because our hypothesis hasn't changed, which is to go for leadership, the decision makers, right? But now we're going through a proxy, which is the EA. The EA is someone who is underappreciated, overworked, but also like someone that basically nothing gets done without them. They're the ones who actually run the companies, right? So they are very, very powerful.
And if they're really good and they're doing their
really
job
good,
well, then the executive listens to them. I need this, go get it.
100%.
Yeah. And
They're not going to
they're sharp. They're on call 24/7. They're in charge of so many high stake things going on, right? It's very impressive to look at them operate now that we're in this world. And so no one's ever built anything for them. They're doing a very tough job. 70% of their day is in the calendar, but they're scheduling on behalf of other people, right? Which means none of the products on the market work for them because all the products are for personal scheduling for yourself. And that's why we built Vimcal EAs to help with that delegated piece. And so it's been interesting because they actually welcome you with open arms, and because they're mostly told like what to do and no one asks for their opinion. When you go to them, ask for feedback, you show them, hey, we built this just for you. They will just like all our calls run over with them because they're so happy to talk to us and it's awesome. And so, yeah, our go-to-market in short is kind of 2 ways. Early stage is more PLG, and then it's more sales going up market. But the hypothesis is the same, which is
Is there any associations for EAs? any national associations or international associations for EAs?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty robust community. There's annual conferences. There are different communities and groups. There's a lot of training for EAs. I would say it's pretty fragmented.
Right.
EAs and admins in general tend to be kind of lone islands within a
Right.
company.
Right.
You're just by yourself supporting sometimes one, sometimes 7 people, and yeah, it's a very lonely position. And a lot of times, like outside of the company, you'll see communities come together and they talk a lot.
Point one of your salespeople to Hollywood, because the EAs in Hollywood. No, sir, I'm serious. The EAs in Hollywood, um, they would love this, and they don't have
Yeah.
same thing. I mean, we're talking about EAs for Fortune 500, the C-suite, etc., and pretty much all the C-suite has their own EA.
Mm-hmm.
But in Hollywood, producers, directors, everybody's got an EA.
That's a very good point. Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
complexity of scheduling meetings with other actors or the whole people that make TV show or the movie or whatever, like that's a legit complexity. I did have a question around budget or how do you finance everything? Is it sold through, and in this case, the EA, and they buy, or they get to have some type of budget to then afford this, or do they basically do you give them the armament so that they can then sell it internally?
Good question. It depends on the size of the company and how strict security is at the company.
Good point.
For example, we see EAs at VC funds, which are smaller than like a Coca-Cola or something, right?
Right.
They can probably just run it themselves or just have their partner approve it. Whereas if we go to a larger company, then we have to, after we basically get a champion within, we have
Right.
to talk to IT, talk to the buying department. But I would say at our price point and versus how much time it saves for EAs, right? This is vertical SaaS for EAs.
Right.
Vimcal EA is $75 a month. We actually save EAs over an hour a day. I'm not saying that as marketing speak. Like
That was my next
measure
question. Is
this.
what are we saving time frame here?
Yeah.
And is that the actual pitch to the EA, or is it we're going to remove the stress of all the fuckery that happens?
I think it's
Yeah.
I think I like lead with EAs, and John, offline I'll need to connect you with somebody that has a professional EA group,
No,
and so
appreciate that.
we'll do that. But Ryan, I the time thing, yeah, they're going to kind of see that innately, but they're going to see the complexity that they deal with,
Right.
and kind of all the pain that comes with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Trying to get 8 board members, we'll go back to that same thing. The
Yeah.
EA that's responsible to get 8 board members or 8 advisors together or whatever. Man, the
It's draining.
hours that
It's taxing. Yeah. Yeah. It's
and
taxing.
if you can just put a link and say, here are the times,
Yeah.
vote.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I could imagine, in some organizations, John, you're probably running into. I mean, there could be 7 EAs supporting 7 executives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
And they're all managing that calendar. And so now this gives them a central hub
Yep.
to say, this, okay, here's how we're doing this.
Yep.
So now does that remove, and I don't think this is a debate of eliminating people, but does that remove the need to have an EA in a traditional sense only focus on calendaring, or if in a corporate environment, for example, there's 7 executives, 7 EAs, they all manage calendars, but they all also do 97 other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you now remove scheduling from all 7 and say scheduling for one, and we're going to have an admin over Vimcal?
That is exactly what we're seeing, at least the admin and EA / chief of staff.
Right. Right.
Yes. Group going towards, which is they're no longer just scheduling. The reason they're called executive assistants is because they do so many things. They're running the show. They're like mini CEOs, basically.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what you see is, one, they're getting more and more responsibilities outside of the traditional appointment scheduling. And 2, one EA is now supporting more and more execs per EA. So we're seeing 3, 4, 5 execs being supported by one person being like more and more the norm, which is really tough because these are very busy people, high egos, on call. Hey, do this, do this, do this, and you have like 5 people just pinging you all the time.
Well, it
Well,
kind of
Ryan,
removes. It's almost like a personal assistant versus EA, and the EA I think has morphed. I'd say it hasn't morphed into a personal assistant, but it does help when that EA can become more personally attached to the executive and
Exactly.
understand that executive, and that's
see,
prevents.
I see those as synonyms. When someone says executive assistant and personal assistant, for me, I'm not saying that that's the way it is. I've always
Yeah,
used those as synonyms, that
I,
they're actually the same people.
yeah,
Is
I've
that not
always
true?
I've always separated them personally because I look at it as a personal assistant as okay. I need my laundry or my dry cleaning picked up. I need this picked up. I'm traveling. I need you to get my suitcase packed. Stuff like that, as opposed to
And you,
executive is business, corporate in the building.
interesting.
There's a pretty fine separation. There's
Yeah.
definitely some overlap between
Yeah.
personal and work, but you will see that most of the time it is in a corporate setting.
Right.
Only the corporate email or like calendar is shared with the EA, and that
Right.
tends to happen more when the EA is supporting multiple people. When you see a one-on-one relationship, especially if it depends on the exec, but
Right.
especially if the exec and the EA have a long-standing relationship. Like we've seen people with the same EA for 20 years, right? At
Right.
that point, it might bleed over more into the personal life and more the personal assistant. And it also depends on the industry. Again, corporate
Hmm.
versus Hollywood is probably way more personal assistants, where you're just doing
Right.
everything for the producer or the
Pretty
director.
much.
Yeah.
That's where my head was in music and Hollywood, more the arts, and it's just I think the assistant part, whether or not it's personal or executive, it's like you're the assistant, you just
Yeah.
do whatever. Um, what challenges or what things have as you move into more and more of the Fortune upstream, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, etc., security and privacy? Like, I'm sure once IT gets a hold of this, they want to kind of test it, hack it,
Mhm.
all of those types of things. So what have you seen there?
Yeah. Um, it's been interesting because it also depends on one, how old the company is and what sector it is in. Um,
You're being
Overall, it
nice.
hasn't
I like
really
that.
been a problem because
Right.
we stand by the most secure protocols. We have all our certifications. We have SOC 2, ISO, GDPR compliance. So it hasn't really been a problem. What we've seen is there are more hoops to go through, for example, with government agencies versus a big
I,
tech
c-
company.
I could see that.
And then a big part of it also depends on the culture of the company. Some just flat out say no third party tools. You have to use the in-house tools. At that point, there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
No,
I would say most of the cases it's pretty much standard IT. You follow the rules, you have the certifications, you do the best practices, and it shouldn't be a problem.
I love this. So the rest of the year, what's you got what 7 months left,
Yeah,
whatever. What's success for you by the end of the year?
that's a great question. Our goal is to get to profitability by mid next year. And then in the short term, again, this year we're focused on our team features and
Right.
our EA product and the intersection of the two. So I think earlier you mentioned if there's a team of 7 EAs at a company, working
Mhm.
together, they have a hub. We are building out, again, multiplayer features for regular Vimcal users and for EAs. One of these being the ability to hand off the settings and the environment for an executive between EAs, because a lot of times an EA will go on vacation, or you'll see
Right.
this EA swap in and out for
Mhm.
an executive. And right now that is extremely painful. Just a lot of calendar sharing, a lot of passing notes. And so we're going to try to make it very easy to just like download all of the executives' preferences into this new EA so they can just start in 10 minutes.
Do you see, because when Ryan and I talk about AI in our space,
Mm-hmm.
we tend to talk about it in, hey, it's gobbling up the lower value task. There's,
Exactly.
like it's okay because we used to have, and Ryan and I both remember this, in the staffing world in particular, we would have people that their entire week, entire job
Yeah.
was scheduling. They were
Mhm.
called schedulers.
Mhm.
So this
Exactly.
was their job. There's candidate schedule, recruiter schedule, hiring manager schedule. They had to kind of go through and you remember those emails going back and forth, Tuesday at 2, Tuesday at 4, Tuesday at 5. Is that East Coast? Is it Pacific? I don't know. Whatever. So, there's been movement in our space for bots and other things to take over some of that lower value tasks that happen in recruiting and HR. To me, what I see in Vimcal is scheduling is exceptionally valuable, but a person doing it as opposed to a technology enabling
Mm.
it is the difference. So first of all, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about our industry and kind of how we see it playing out in
Mhm.
recruiting and HR. The other is to I don't know, to just get your take on um, AI being that, like when we say we want a vote, instead of a human picking the 3 or 4 spots, do you see a time in which AI says, based on what we know,
Mhm.
here are the 4 spots, so that a human doesn't even have to go and say, okay, why don't we pick this time, this time, this time, this time, and I'll send it out to the people.
Mhm.
Do you see AI, or even, I guess it's machine learning, do you see that as a taking that away from the human in a good way? Just it's enabling the human to do other things, making them more efficient at something else.
Mm.
So do you see that happening at Vimcal?
I think in general that is a near impossible problem to solve. And before I get into the reason why,
Right.
I'd like to ask you if you've ever used a booking link before. Have you ever gotten a meeting booked at a time where you're like, oh, I don't want a meeting at this time this week?
Right.
Right. Because of that, even the
Right.
perfect AI
Won't know that.
won't know the perfect context
Mhm.
because it's going off of your openings on your calendar,
That's
which
right.
relies on you to update it all the time when you have new information, right?
That's right.
Maybe when you said when the AI is looking through your preferences, let's say you said Thursday 2 to 5 free every week, right? And next week it just so happens that you have to go pick up your kids early, or but someone
Right.
booked at 3 p.m. The AI is correct technically, but you don't want that meeting, and so you're gonna
Right.
start trusting it less. And this actually happens to most people like 2, 3 times a week, and they're just like, "Oh, I had that
Yeah.
3 hour block. I wanted to do deep focus, but right in the middle, a meeting got booked, and
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
have no one to blame." Right? Like these are the preferences I set,
Yeah.
and the
And
Right.
this
AI
is
was right.
William, this
And
is where you always tell me, just put it on your calendar. I'm like, but I don't know I want to just be in deep focus until I want to be in deep focus. And then the
John, that was
slots
a
hit.
great. No, that's a great example because again, AI can't know what's in your mind.
Yeah.
Over time, it might be able to pull
when
out
that's solved,
some.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think
Yeah.
it's
yeah. Good point.
I think the big one of not the but one of the big sell points into the enterprise is your own example, John, from the very beginning. You
Yeah.
potentially lost hundreds of thousands of dollars
Hmm.
because you couldn't manage your calendar appropriately. Now
Yeah.
scale that up to a Fortune 100. In in
Every salesperson has lost
yeah,
money. Every recruiter's lost
exactly.
money.
An
Yeah.
EA screws up a calendar
Hmm.
just because they've got 95 other things they're doing.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That could be millions of dollars in bookings because the
Yeah.
salesperson missed a call or
That's right.
missed a proposal or missed just being, somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's to me that's the big pitch at enterprise, right? Obviously time and all that stuff, but I mean just the security of knowing you're
It's
going to be where
interesting
you need to
It
be.
compounds. Absolutely.
because the way the pitch is, if you go in with just efficiency,
Hmm.
people are always going to look at it and go, okay, that's cool. It saves me time. It saves cost. Great. But where
Right.
does it make me money? And
Hmm.
John, I think that's one of the things. It's the opportunity cost of what you lost because that meeting wasn't scheduled or because you missed it, etc. I think there's something there that where you can create a calculator that shows people how much money they lost by just inefficient calendaring.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
So
brother,
Well, I got one more question. My final question.
Go ahead.
And I probably should have asked this way up front because I know people that are listening to this, specifically this episode, because Vimcal is just, it's in that sweet spot of a lot of people, pretty much everybody, even if they don't know it. Where does Vimcal differ from the other players? And I know you've answered this throughout the call, but let's just kind of get the clip nugget here. Where does Vimcal differ from, say, Calendly or some of the others that people are familiar with?
Vimcal lets you put guardrails on your calendar and lets you protect your time. And for example, with our slots feature where you drag and copy, as you're dragging times to give out to people, you're explicitly sending availabilities, you're implicitly designing your week as you go. You're saying these times I want to go to these people. These other times I want to send to this other person, right? And the times you don't drag, you're protecting for yourself. Right. So indirectly, you are protecting your time. That way, for 100% of meetings that get booked through Vimcal, there are 0 surprises. I think that is the main thing that people don't realize after using it for a while, like why they like it. They can't like put a finger on it, right? But that is why, because we protect your time. And we do that for people, again, who 9 to 5, back to back, just the counter's a solid color. I would say that is the number one thing. And then there are the sweet features like the keyboard shortcuts, the NLP, all the AI features we have. But it is really giving you control over your time.
Yeah, and for me, I'd add to a solution for EAs, because a lot of the solutions that are out there aren't built for EAs, and the one-to-many.
Right.
I mean, I've been looking for a one-to-many solution for probably 10 years now. So because of advisory board calls and board calls, it's just hard to get 8 people on the same page with all the different time zones and everybody being busy. So, John, I love